Welcome, everybody. If you're watching live, as always, please feel free to ask any questions along the way. If you think you might like to come on the show yourself, please do get in contact. My details on the channel's About page. There's next week, we'll be talking with Dave Darko, but today's guest is Liz Clark, aka BlitzCityDIY. Hello, Liz.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. Would you like to introduce yourself, say who you are, etc.?
Sure. So my name's Liz. I go by BlitzCityDIY on my YouTube channel and on various social medias. And I kind of dabble with electronics, coding, 3D printing, and most recently, Euroraxons.
Nice. Very cool. So as everyone's probably no doubt aware by now, I like to sort of talk about people's history and how they got to today, etc. Would you be happy to just give us a quick background on yourself and we'll have a chat around that points that come up?
Yeah, totally. So I guide you punt, and I've joked that we kind of have a similar trajectory that got us to electronics and things. But basically, as a teenager, I started playing guitar and being in bands, and I discovered that I could, with just a little bit of equipment, record my band, other bands, and put on shows. And so I really got involved with kind of the music technology aspect of that. And so then in college, I found out you could actually major in that and be for a job. So
I didn't see that.
Right. So I pursued that. And then during that time in college, I started looking into other aspects of technology because I was worried I wasn't learning enough in school to then get a job after school. So that's when I kind of first heard about Arduino. And it was still kind of early days. It was like 2012, 2013. And I had zero coding background at all. And even in high school or anything, I've heard folks say they were able to take computer classes and stuff. My school just didn't have that. When I looked into Arduino, it was all completely brand new, and I was doing a lot of like copy paste kind of things, but I didn't get what was going on. So I kind of shelved it for a bit. And then after graduating from school, I started working as an AV technician. And after I was working full time for a bit, I started to feel like I wasn't being as creative as I had in the past. I was an AV technician for a university, and so my idea to kind of get back to doing creative things was I could do a YouTube channel, and then that way I was getting back into doing video, I was getting back to doing editing, and I could film the projects I was working on. And so that's how I kind of got back into doing figuring out how to do electronics and coding, and kind of went from there.
Okay, awesome, well done. So during your teenage years, you said you play guitar, you were doing recording and things. Can you just talk to us a bit more about that? Presumably you were in a band and just wanted to sort of have a thing that you could show off. This is us kind of thing.
Yeah. So I MySpace was big at the time.
I love it. Yeah.
So it kind of went from, in order to get shows and things, it kind of went from like who you knew to like you had to be able to point someone towards your MySpace page so they could hear you. And so that's how I kind of got into recording, making sure like, and then other folks were trying to like get their bands up too, but then maybe didn't want to get into recording, didn't want to pay for studio time. So we'd kind of get together and put demos up. Not saying they sounded the best, but it was just a way to do it. And I got really into reading about kind of the history of DIY punk in the 70s and 80s. And when I heard like some of these bands that I really looked up to had done kind of the same thing, like basement recording and stuff, that really drove me to kind of keep pursuing it. So that was like my life when I was growing up.
Okay. And so what kind of equipment were you working with, and how were you achieving these recordings?
Very basic. So I had like a old laptop, and for the longest time I had just a single input like USB sound card, and it was actually a little story is it only had a 1/4-inch input. And so they do make mic cables that do XLR to 1/4-inch, and I remember I just want a longer cable, so I was going to Guitar Center to get this cable, and I needed to ask for assistance to get it because it was too high for me to reach. And the guy who was working there started telling me I wasn't using the right kind of cable. I was going to have terrible audio quality and and uh, it was really like it kind of almost came like a challenge. I started to feel like it was a challenge to use like the
wrongest stuff.
Yes, not really the wrongest, but just like trying to get it done with the least equipment as possible, and just trying to achieve like better and better results without having to shell out a ton of cash for things.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And then during college, you did, I think it was technology and music tech. Is that right?
Yeah, I did music technology and media production. So media production is basically like, no, it's all good. They're all kind of synonyms. So media production was more like video things. So there was like a mass comm department with a TV station. And then there was music department, and there you could major in music technology, which is basically like audio recording. So I majored in both those because I wanted to just make sure I knew as much as possible coming out. And my mom was a teacher, and everyone in my family had always had very like standard like trade jobs and things. So when I said I wanted to major in music, I think my mom was just like, oh my god. So I kind of sold it to her as like, well, it's like learning a trade, and it is really. Because once you know audio stuff and video stuff, it's really applicable across a broad range. But yeah, in college, it's what I pursued, and it was kind of in the school I went to was very small, and it was in kind of the middle of the woods. It was great because as a result, there really wasn't anything else to do but like go to a practice room, practice your instrument, or go into the studio and really like hunker down and try new things. So.
Okay. Neat. You told me as we were talking before the stream that the first book you had to read in college. You carry on with the story.
So I was a little scared going to school because I think if you'd seen me up to like my last year of high school, you wouldn't have necessarily thought it was like college material. So once I got there, you get your book list for your classes, and I was taking. What was also nice about the school I went to is they started you in your major right away. Sometimes they have you wait. So I was able to take an intro to recording class for a semester. And one of the required textbooks was actually a book I had picked up and read. There was like a general recording book like back when I first started recording. So it kind of made me think like, okay, I'm in the right place. But then also later I was like, did I need to come here if I already read that?
That's a really tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, it was good. But I've always thought it was funny that it also saved me a little money because I already had the book.
No, that confidence that you're in the right place is very comforting, isn't it? But anyway, yes. We had a quick question from Dave Darko. Hello, Dave. Is your stuff still on MySpace?
It is not. So there was similar to what's happening right now with a bird site. The servers there was a server issue of MySpace like I want to say like 2010, 2011, where a bunch of stuff was lost, including most of the audio postings.
Wow, okay. I didn't realize that.
I still have those, but they are not for other people to hear. But that's also something to keep in mind as the bird site has some issues right now. I've already lived through losing all that, because what was sad about it was there were a lot of local bands that weren't around anymore, and that's really the only place where their music was, and then it's gone.
That's an interesting thing I find as well, because a lot of people are good at just sort of putting their stuff out there and not necessarily keeping hold of it themselves, and that's really upsetting when that kind of thing happens. It's gone,
Yeah, especially for communities that are more local, and it's just it's like history.
We've had another great question on the music topic. Are you working on any current music projects? I think this might be something to talk about more later, but
so I've really fallen in love with Eurorack since, and that was kind of a side effect of the pandemic, because with Eurorack there's a lot of room for tinkering from the electronic side, and so I've gotten really into making patches that way, and I'm starting to integrate guitar playing with it too. So I'm hoping to start maybe like doing some like proper recordings rather than just like recording out the patch.
Yeah, awesome, very cool. So back to your story then. You said you were in AV tech at uni. Could you just talk to us about what that means, what that involves? It sounds kind of interesting.
So I'm kind of in the Boston area in Massachusetts, and if folks don't know, Boston's a huge college town in that like, I don't know, there's probably like 30, 40 universities in the area.
I don't know if that's a difference between the UK and America, or if that's the Boston thing or what, but that sounds
it's
excessive
kind of
almost.
I mean, there's other cities but Boston, like, because it's Harvard, MIT, is just kind of
Okay.
it's one of those things. So when I was trying to get a full-time job after college, I found out like all these schools need full staffs of AV technicians, folks that record classes and like help out with just the technology. So I started working at a med school out of after I graduated, recording class in the auditorium and helping them with like their simulation labs and things like that. And I actually ended up working there until this past spring when I started working full time with Betafruit. So about
Cool.
a year.
We'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is yeah, as you said, basically recording lectures, putting them online for students to attend remotely. Is that right, or is it more of a catch-up system? Or
Kind of both. So you have some students that come in person to class, then there's others that kind of watch them after, and then there's some that watch it multiple times to get the material. But it's basically like a study tool.
Sure.
And then the longer I was there, there started kind of a switch over with pedagogies for teaching where folks were doing things called flipped classrooms, which is the idea that the student kind of takes in all the material beforehand and then in class they're applying it in activities. So
Oh wow, okay.
faculty would have us trim out certain parts of lectures to kind of edit into these lessons that would then be posted for the students to watch. So that started becoming more common as I went along.
Okay.
And then with the pandemic, switching to fully online for a bit, getting folks onto Zoom, and then also helping them make pre-recorded videos was a
Okay.
big part of it.
Neat. So this is a lot of video editing and a lot of audio stuff, I guess, for the live capture of the session.
Yeah.
Kind of
So I had there was like an auditorium in the course that I mainly helped out with, and in the booth was a soundboard. There were a couple of remote cameras that I could control, projection system, all that. So I'd kind of be back there monitoring all that. And also if they had any issues while they were going, like PowerPoint or any other technology, like I'd help out with that too.
Okay.
There was a polling system they'd use, which could always be exciting.
Right. Okay. Neat.
Yeah.
And okay, so during that time, during that employment, you kind of found Arduino.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk a bit more about that? How you got into it, what you discovered, etc.
Yeah. So it was while I was doing my YouTube channel, I started going into more and more projects, and the hardest part was that like I said, like I just had zero background. So it's like trying to go from like nothing to like coding something from scratch and figuring out how to build a circuit that is really what I'm looking for, not something that someone else has put up that I'm just trying to copy. And like I can still remember like just even like the concept like what is a resistor, or like what do these pin numbers mean on the Arduino and things like that. And looking at the code, it just looks like this mush
just
of
stuff.
this nonsense. Yeah, like what is a uint _8? And I've mentioned this when I've talked to folks before, just about like learning in general. Like sometimes you feel like your brain's almost trying to like expand, like it like physically hurts. But then you get that moment of like, oh, it clicks.
Makes
and
sense.
so
Yeah.
And so getting like that series of clicks so I could build more and more complicated projects like that was definitely it was tricky to get there, but once that started getting there, then I felt like a momentum building.
Okay, awesome. And so was that before YouTube, or was that after you started working on doing YouTube videos?
After.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I started my YouTube channel, like I don't recommend this, but if you get like the very first videos, I was doing a lot of like actual like computer hardware stuff, and more almost like kind of general tech, not necessarily DIY things.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
then I was kind of shifting, which I think
Right.
was
Yeah. Very cool. And this was all, all the Arduino stuff was kind of self-led learning, I guess. Is that right? So,
yeah. When we were talking earlier, you asked me like, I can't really say why I wanted to, other than I just kind of wanted to.
yeah.
I just, I don't really have a reason. I just kind of thought it was a cool thing to do. I guess like as I had gotten more into tech, in school and then working, it was kind of going to the DIY things and figuring out how stuff works, and even tangentially related to like right to repair.
hmm
It kind of it has a kind of similar ethos line as the DIY punk stuff, and kind of like taking control of your environment and being able to kind of choose your own destiny, I guess.
Right.
But that was probably kind of the back inspiration, but also it's just I think it's cool to just be able to kind of make whatever you want.
Agreed. Yeah, neat. Okay. The YouTube channel then was, I think you said it was to sort of keep going with the video editing and keep up at
Yeah.
that, but the content was then really the Arduino and the new stuff to you. You were quite familiar with the video editing side. Is that right?
Yeah, like if I hadn't had the video background, I wouldn't have made a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And it was really more to keep. I was concerned that I was going to lose like the editing skill part of it, because I've even noticed if I take some time off from editing, or like you do lose the speed that you build up.
Interesting. Is
Um,
it kind of the what you can do, the creativity side, or is it more the how to do it that you
It's more the
find?
how, and I think it was in the back of my mind of like if I wanted to change jobs, and
hmm
maybe do more of an editing thing, which is I think at the time was more what I was thinking. I
Okay.
wanted to be able to show like kind of a like sometimes you need to show a reel of recent stuff you've done.
Right.
So that was also kind of a motivation when I first started.
Okay.
And then that kind of shifted.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. And was YouTube, was that kind of the first time that you were really on camera? Was you previously, you were behind the camera doing all the tech and filming maybe, but now suddenly you're on screen as well?
Yeah, and
How was that?
that was strange.
Yeah.
And when I talked to friends and said I was like starting a YouTube channel, I think some of them were like, "Well, that doesn't really make sense based on what I know about you." Um, and it was also really hard at first, to talk on camera and be comfortable with it. Like I can remember just trying to, be able to get the words together to
Mhm.
sound like I had a coherent thought.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
that was really
I know the
tricky.
feeling well.
Yeah, and yeah, so but I think, over time that a nice side effect without really being intentional about it was I've gotten more comfortable with speaking,
Okay.
publicly, and even in my day job back when I was at the med school, like, being able to explain technical concepts to the faculty in a very succinct way.
Mhm.
Um, I think my YouTube channel actually helped me to do that, better than
Interesting.
I had
Okay.
been able to before.
Yeah, very cool. I've always wondered, I've not made many YouTube videos, but I've done quite a few streams now, and
Right.
I find that looking back at footage of myself, I don't like the sound of my voice. I don't like the way things come out sometimes, the words I use, the phrasing, etc. Is that
Yeah.
something you just learn to sort of live with, or is that something you actually think you get better at in the first place? The words flow, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, I've gotten over the sound of my voice thing, but I can remember at first being like, "Ooh." And there's still sometimes where I'm editing and I'll listen, I'll be like, "Well, that didn't make sense what you just said." Like,
Do it
um,
again.
yeah. So, it's it kind of depends on the day. Like, if you have a good
Okay.
day, sometimes you have takes that are like, "Okay, that
Yeah.
was decent." And then other
Nice.
days like, "Oh, I guess you didn't get enough sleep last night."
Fair enough. Cool. Okay, so let's touch on something more recent. Back in March this year, what happened?
I went to working full time with Adafruit, which is not to be corny, but a dream come true.
Fantastic.
And
Well done. Yeah.
thank you. The way that kind of occurred was after I'd gotten into Arduino, I still struggled to really wrap my brain around C programming. I
Mhm.
think a lot of folks do. So one thing that was kind of new that was coming out from Adafruit was CircuitPython, which is the ability to, run Python on microcontrollers.
Mm-hmm.
And I really took to that. And I don't know if it was a combo of like, I think folks will say that Python's more like beginner friendly. And also Adafruit's tutorials, that like they just spoke to me in a different way than like other resources I found before for Arduino. So I started writing basically all my projects in CircuitPython, and I also started going on Adafruit's show and tell show that they do every week. And then they asked me to write some guides for them with some of the projects I came on. And then fast forward a couple of years, we chatted and I started working full time with them. So
Amazing.
now, thank you. So now I do new product guides with them, project guides too, and also kind of anything that they need done for the remote team. So that might be like posting up PCB files or checking out code repositories, things like that.
Okay. Is this all written, or is there video content as well that you're doing?
I have done some video content. I do a lot of 1-minute videos that a lot of them go on TikTok, which is kind of funny because I don't even really know how that app works. But that's been fun to have that like 1-minute constraint because I don't do that in my normal YouTube videos. So being able to, it's harder than it sounds to be able to write a script that hits all the points you want to hit about a project, but just in 1 minute and have it not feel rushed. So,
sounds like a real challenge.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's a fun challenge. Because you have to really think about the shots you're getting, really think about your wording for your script, and it's fun.
Do you ever find that there are points which you can't justify the time in the video, but you really want to include and you kind of miss them or you feel sad?
Yeah, I did this project for them, and which we can talk about a bit, but because it's a MIDI to CV project, and I had this line talking about like synthesizers are like musical circuits, and I was kind of like going on, and I was like, I gotta cut it.
That's way too long.
I can't. I'm kidding. 1:05. I can't.
Oh.
But at the end of the day, like it's then folks are getting the information that they want, and it's just kind of the nature of social media right now. So it works out.
Okay. In terms of the guides and the documentation stuff you're doing now, then I guess your background has really set you up quite well for it, because you've been so involved in capturing lectures from a university, really technical medical type stuff, I guess. All of this self-led learning with the Arduino and even the recording stuff. Can you just talk a bit about how that's influenced your work today, I guess?
Yeah. So I kind of always try to keep kind of a beginner's mindset with everything that I write and the projects I try to come up with too. I try to think of like, what would I have found to be helpful when I was just starting? And so one example recently was there were some new features in the newest, it's currently beta version of CircuitPython 8, because they're doing a lot of Wi-Fi workflow stuff. And Python has the ability to do these .env files, which are environmental variables. And they hadn't been CircuitPython before. And so I was hearing folks say like, oh yeah, the .env file. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I wrote a guide on using the PicoW with CircuitPython and Wi-Fi. And I really dug into, okay, like what is this .env file? What are environmental variables? And I put a page in the guide that's just talking about that, so that if folks are just coming into it, they can go to that and see what that means and how it's how your like SSID and network password are getting passed in through that file. So just whenever I'm writing any sort of documentation, I just try to keep that in mind. Like if I am coming at this with absolutely no background knowledge, like when I was starting with Arduino, didn't know what like the pin numbers meant. What would I want to see and how would I want it explained to me? So I try to keep that and everything.
That's awesome. And well done, because that's so difficult sometimes to remember that others don't have the same context as you. And it's vital. So well done, and thank you, I guess, from everyone else's point of view as well. Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about on that front before we maybe move on to some of your projects you got lined up?
I guess I would also say, like, if you're someone that, writes, makes projects, I try documenting it. When I first started documenting projects, I put it up on Hackster.io. There's
Mhm.
also Instructables. And I always looked at it as if like one person comes across my code while they're searching various terms for what they're trying to do, and that helps them figure out how to do it. Like that's really rewarding. So I think if you can, share what you're making, share the files, try to give like some narrative to why certain stuff is working, and you can really help folks out without even
Yep.
realizing it. So definitely recommend that.
Awesome. Thank you. Just quickly before we move on, there's been some appreciation for the fact that it's still Halloween at your place.
Oh yeah, I refuse to go to Christmas before. In the States we have Thanksgiving coming up in like 2 days, but I refuse to do Christmas before that. So
I love it. And the ghost is awesome.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Should we have a look at some of your projects then? Is
Yeah.
that okay? Yeah.
So let me switch cameras. So I've got like a smorgasbord here on my desk. So recently I've been doing kind of it's been a nice mix of like synth projects and Wi-Fi projects.
Okay.
So this is a Pico W or a Pi Cow. In a
I see. I don't know how I missed that one actually.
Well, there's so many boards that are named Pico. So the moment I think it might have been on the bird site that someone was like, "Oh, it's a Pi Cow," I was like, "Yes, that's what I'm calling it."
Taken.
So this project originally was an HTTP server.
Okay.
And so there's a screen here that would show SSID, and there's a static HTML site that was being passed as an F string. But recently it's kind of more become my like Pico W kind of test bed because
Okay.
it's just a nice little case. And right now it's running code where it can post to Mastodon. So if you like, we could actually try to do like a live demo.
Oh, that's daring. I'd love to.
Yeah, let's try it out. Let me share my screen so we can see Moo. Okay. Can you see my
There we
screen?
go. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna reset the code.
Do you mind just talking us through what we're looking at quickly on screen?
Oh yeah, totally. So basically this is just some CircuitPython code that's running on the Pico W, and it's using that env file to bring in my token for Mastodon, my Mastodon host site, and Wi-Fi, everything like that. So when I reset the board, which I just did, I get a prompt in the REPL using input that's I can enter in the text that I want to send as a Mastodon post. So I can put, "I'm live with Addie Grand right now." And I'll put sent from my Pico W. So then I hit enter. And then I have a extra prompt, send to Mastodon, yes, no. So I can do Y and enter. And then after
all of your followers get a notification from a cow? Is that where we're going?
So there we go.
Oh, look at that.
So, and then I think if I go to Mastodon, I can quickly share.
I've already started.
Let me go to here, share.
Oh, there we go.
And there it is.
Awesome.
And the funny thing is, so like in the development side of Mastodon, you set up an app, and so I called it CircuitPython Toots. So if I send it from Pico W, like it shows up as sent from CircuitPython Toots.
That's neat. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's something I've been working on recently. I've been working with Kattni, my coworker at Adafruit. We're doing some Mastodon API things with CircuitPython, so that's kind of how to post with it. And for a live demo, that went surprisingly well.
That was awesome. Well done. Thank you.
Of course. So
can you just talk us through the cow a bit more? I really want the eyes to be buttons for some reason. I don't know why, but
yeah, that would be really cool.
What have we got on the cow?
Okay, so I really like using this technique with 3D printing where you do color swaps. I did it with the skull too. Bring it up center here. And so what that does is like when you're modeling your design, you can do different depths. So once you know your kind of layer height. So like I knew that I was going to have the spots be raised and the face be raised so that you can get these details. And then in your slicer software, you can have it switch layer heights at those heights so that you can get different colors going.
Okay.
And I find it to be really handy. So I don't have a laser cutter or CNC. So if I need something kind of flat, but I want it to have like a little bit of personality, then I can do this kind of color swap technique and get kind of more interesting enclosures that also kind of print up pretty quickly too, because they're
Yeah.
pretty thin.
I was going to say that's one of the big, what am I guess difficulties, pain points, I guess, with 3D printing is it can be really slow, can't it?
Yes.
And so making them thin like this is actually a really neat idea.
Yeah.
Nice.
And this design is also a snap fit case. It's a little crammed in there because that temp sensor has a long line, but I think I can.
Sorry, we've got loads of fantastic cow-related comments coming through.
Okay.
Utterly fabulous.
I love a pun. But this case is also.
I'm really moved by this presentation. Sorry.
That's my friend Ari, actually. So this is a snap fit case, which Nehru he's really into snap fits, and he has some really great tutorials on the Adafruit site showing how to do that. So I also, whenever I'm doing an enclosure like this, I'll utilize his kind of snap fit technique.
Okay. I might have to look that one up. Neat.
Yeah, highly recommend.
Nice. Okay. So the cow is a Pico W.
Yes.
With an OLED screen, is that?
Yes. Yeah. So this is over I2C.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually going to unplug it so I can't open it up.
Oh, sure. Sorry. I don't mean to make you take all your things apart.
No, I was planning to. So mounted to the cow, Adafruit has the Pi cowbell, which is kind of this add-on board.
Okay.
That plugs in there. Oh yeah, the puns everywhere. And it has the stemma port for I2C, and there's like prototyping area here too. So for this project, I was able to utilize that to be able to get this. I always forget the any part that has just like numbers doesn't have like a phonetic name. I always forget, but it's this is a DS. I want to say it's 1.8.
One of those temperature sensors.
Yeah,
I know what you're referring to.
So that's wired in there.
Yeah.
And there's also this little LED too for like.
Nice.
Yeah, and that goes into.
The and that comes through the little cowbell on his collar.
Yeah, very subtle, but it's there. And that
brilliant.
All in
there. Nice.
Yeah, I was. The cow modeling probably added a little bit extra time per project, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah, very cool. So what else are we looking at?
Oh yeah. So I think when I unplugged the Pico W, I reset this one. But no, it's okay. Let me do a quick reload. There we go. So this is also an upcoming project that I'm working with my coworker Katney on. So it's 3 daisy-chained alphanumeric displays.
Okay.
And they are connected to an ESP32S2 board. And what it's doing is it's doing a countdown to, it's set right now to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I've set up the code, I can actually share my screen again to show it.
Yeah, sure.
Go to Moo. All right. So this is not it.
Yeah.
1 second. Okay. So basically what you can do is you can set the year, month, day, even hour, minute for whatever event you're looking at. And then you name your event and then what you want to scroll by when it's the day of the event.
Okay.
And so then basically it's getting struck time from a server, and then it's comparing it to your setup time, also a struck time, and doing some math. Mm-hmm. And then it counts down phonetically, what it is.
Nice.
So that's going to be a project that comes up shortly. And then I also kind of want to expand on it to maybe have it pull from you could set up maybe a calendar of events. And so not necessarily Christmas. So I think that could be fun.
Count down to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you could like do a whole calendar year of it. So yeah.
Neat. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so this is something that keeps I don't know what the word is, surprising me, I guess, is that little board there with the USB-C connector, I think,
Yeah,
connected onto these Starburst displays. That is everything, right? That's a tiny little
that's
thing.
it.
You're
Yeah.
just running the whole
So
string.
the only soldering you'd have to do is get the displays onto the board, but otherwise, like, it's
Yeah.
all solderless, just I2C connections.
I-
Which I'm a little biased because Adafruit does employ me, but like I just think that's like really cool for folks.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. And the fact that that's Wi-Fi and everything as well is I love it.
yeah, this is just a little cutie pie
Yeah.
ESP32F2. Like it's I think the chips on the back. Yeah, just
Yeah.
that's it.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's so cute.
Okay. So what's the dare I ask, the thing with the orange and green buttons? Because they're the clicky buttons, which
this monstrosity here.
yeah, everyone's
this is
been
kind of
excitedly talking about these for a little while now, haven't they?
Yeah. So let me try to get this into a state. So this is the newest thing I'm working on. This is a side project, not for Adafruit,
Okay.
where I've gotten really into Euro accents, and one thing is I can't seem to leave my like music theory background behind though when I'm working on it, which I know like half the point is you're supposed to like be okay with being kind of atonal, but I can't. So one thing, there are modules in Eurorack called quantizers, which will like tune the notes that are coming out of your oscillators to more recognizable notes and scales.
Okay.
But
So can you just expand on that slightly for us? Is that like a sine wave coming into your module, and then the module will pitch bend it, I guess, to match a note? Is that right?
Yeah. So there's this there's a signal path called 1V oct, 1 volt per octave, and so basically there are these voltages that kind of align with notes, and so when you put that into your oscillator, and I may be not explaining this completely correctly, but basically those voltages tune your oscillator so that the audio output is sounding in tune to you. So but one thing I found, at least with the modules I'm using, and granted I'm not like going like super high end because it can get very expensive very fast. A lot of the quantizers I've looked at, like they're only a single input and single output. Right. So if you want to have like multiple melodies going, you kind of have two issues that come up. One in that, like trying to then have like maybe two quantizers be exactly in the same pitch, if they're by different manufacturers, or they aren't like explicitly telling you like this is the key you're in. It might just be like a pot that you're turning. You can't really, it's hard to get them in tune with each other. And then if you're then explicitly tuning like one kind of like random melody, then it's like, how are you getting multiple melodies that are in tune? So with this idea, I would have 4 inputs and 4 outputs that would be quantized and generating melodies, and so they're all coming from the same source, so they're all getting the same voltages and they're all kind of condensed together so that I can kind of have 4 explicit melodies going at the same time that I have more control over.
Interesting. Okay.
So I just it's something I've been like kind of thinking of for like probably a better part of a year. And I started first experimenting, like, can I do 1V oct output with CircuitPython? And I was able to do that. So I was like, okay, step 1. And then and then it was like, using an ADC to take in that like untuned voltage and reading it with CircuitPython, and then putting it out as tuned with a DAC. So that's what kind of these two breadboards are doing.
So one of those boards is the input and one is the output, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So 4 in here with actually this is the ADC, so 4 in here and then 4 out with the DAC. And so then the idea is that it would kind of be this like kind of tabletop thing, and these would be the piano keys. So they're nice clicky step switches. And I'm gonna, when I do the final version, I'm thinking it'll be a black and white colorway, so it'll actually look like a piano keyboard. And then those are kind of inputting the notes, and you'd be able to put in notes for each of the 4 channels. So that's where this encoder comes in, and a display to kind of show your different menus. And yeah, so I started breadboarding this weekend, and I have one channel right now quantized, and so kind of be building up from there. So it's kind of a long-term project, but
Yeah.
So far so good.
Nice. So you've kind of built it up step by step, and everything's going okay. That's awesome.
So far.
Can you just talk to me a bit more about the buttons? So you said they were the piano keys, piano notes. Is that
Yes.
a matter of like you pick the key that you want to shift from and to, for example, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so these I've just kind of, even with the breadboard, I kind of like raised what would be the sharps
Yeah.
on here. And then so in software in CircuitPython code, like I have this file that has kind of an array of all the voltages, and it's just making it so that they line up with the order that you're iterating through the pins, so that like if I press this, which would be C, then it would give all the voltages that correspond with the octaves of C, and stuff
Oh,
like
I
that.
see. I understand
Yeah.
now. Apologies.
No, all good. It's this is a wild west here of spaghetti, so I understand if any of it's a little weird.
No. That's all good.
Yeah. So what's nice about these switches though is they have a built-in LED that you can wire up. So when the key is engaged, like I'm having the LED stay on, so you also get that visual too.
Yeah.
Cause I originally was thinking about maybe using like MX switches because those are fun. But the spacing can sometimes be a little weird. So with these, you can get them like really close together, like they're literally just like touching side by side. So that'll be nice when I'm doing like the final enclosure, getting spacing.
Yeah, looks neat.
Thanks.
We got a good question from Guy quickly before we move on to the next project. Is it ever difficult to decide which projects are Adafruit and which are your personal projects, I guess?
So it's easier than you'd think, because basically if it's going to be an Adafruit project, like you want it to be something that someone will want to reproduce.
Okay.
And you want it to be something that's also kind of showcasing like the best way to use one of the products in the store too. So in that case, like, simple is definitely best. Like with that alphanumeric display, like it's simple, but it's showing folks like you can make this like countdown thing. So basically, like if it's like educational, like someone's going to really learn something from doing it, then that's like a good Adafruit project. This would be a terrible Adafruit project. This is like the worst thing that could possibly go on the Learn system. So I keep it away. So basically, like, yeah, it has to be reproducible. It has to be using best practices for the electronics and code, and showcasing, and also like is getting kind of a concept out there. That was one reason I did like the HTTP server with the cow. We didn't really have a project showing that, so and for the actual application of the HTTP server, like it's super basic. Like you're just showing the temperature, and you're just one thing when you press a button on the site is it starts the party parrot animation on the screen, because why not? And it's like not really useful on its own, but folks can then take that example and make it useful. Like you kind of want to have these like jumping off points for folks to be able to learn from. So
building blocks and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice. Do you find a lot of pressure with the Adafruit stuff to showcase the new products, or is there some kind of feedback system, I guess, where people can say, I'd like to know how to do this, but I can't figure it out. There's no good demos. Can you help?
Yeah, we definitely we take, like, if folks are asking a lot of questions on like the forum that kind of repeating itself, then we'll definitely take inspiration from there. But a lot of it is like, stuff we might see around that think's cool, or Lemore will find things, PT will find things. So it's kind of like I don't really feel pressure, because there's always something to do. Like there's never a shortage of project ideas from anyone. And where I also do documentation for the new products, like it kind of makes it like a nice mix for what I'm doing. So
one supports the other, I guess, in a way.
Exactly.
As well. Yeah. Okay. Nice. So should we talk about the skull?
Sure. Yeah. So this is This is a MIDI to CV converter. So
Okay.
in here is a QT Py RP2040, and that takes in USB MIDI, and then it outputs to a DAC through its eyeballs, 1B oct and a gate. So basically, the idea is like you press a note on a MIDI keyboard, and it will send that like on message and the pitch out. So I think I saw Thea was in the chat, but like her, since Winter Bloom, she has a module Soul, which is USB to MIDI that kind of does something similar. And it's kind of a really common thing that folks want to do, is to be able to control their synths with MIDI. And this was kind of a way to show folks that it was possible, and also a really great excuse to design up a skull enclosure.
Okay.
But yeah, this was fun, just having like a quick example. And the DAC in here is different from the DAC that I have on the breadboard here. It's only one input, one output. So that was kind of nice to show off too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said it was I think a gate and a CV, is that right? So you've got so the two eyeballs do all the eye sockets. Sorry, they're not really there anymore, are they? It's a skull after all.
Yeah, it's so gate is kind of like this. The actual signal voltage is usually 5 volts, so it's like a full on and full off.
Okay.
And then the 1V oct is like voltages in between. And then the modules will be they'll have inputs that are specifically for gate or 1V oct, so they can kind of translate those voltages.
Have you played with this much already? Is this something that you've worked into your synths? And
yeah, I will use it as kind of a quick thing. I have to say, for my own usage, I tend to use Thea's module Soul more, because it's racked up and things. But this is good if I want to do like when I did like a demo video for the project, I used it with like a small tabletop synth that isn't racked up. So if you don't want to have your racked up system, like this is kind of a nice like tabletop way to do it.
Yeah, neat. Very cool. We've got some appreciation from Guy again. There you go. Yeah, you toe the line brilliantly with your learning guide. Simple, accessible, minimal, but totally desirable.
Thank you.
So well done. I think that's great feedback, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else you might like to talk about? Any questions from the audience? I've sort of run out of notes.
Thank you for having me on.
No.
I don't know if you have questions, but
that's okay. I'm sure you've got many more things that I could ask about, but I won't get you to drag them on camera when they're not here.
Okay, yeah, I've also, like, you've reached the end of your notes, I've reached the end of my
No worries. We've got a question about snow in Boston. Always beneficial.
We haven't had, well, I take that back. We had like a dusting one night for like an hour, but then it got rained over, so it didn't stay. But it's been very cold here, so I'm a little concerned about winter.
Had a photo from a friend in Niagara, near Niagara Falls, and yeah, jealous of the snow is all I can say, because we haven't had any for the last couple of years, I don't think. So anyway, there we go. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I think we'll come to a close there. Hope everyone's enjoyed, and it's been great to talk to you. Thank you for showing off your stuff.
Oh, thank you so much.
No worries. Next week we're talking to Dave Darko, but aside from that, it's goodbye from us.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.